Hey guys, tonight we drift into the warm, flickering world of humanity's oldest light source. The humble candle, that waxy miracle that gave us romantic dinners, birthday traditions, and the subtle art of setting things on fire while pretending it's sophisticated. So before you settle in with your overpriced aromatherapy candle, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy watching history melt before your eyes. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and whether you're burning any candles right now. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us in the glow. Now, dim those electric lights, maybe light an actual candle for atmosphere, and let's ease into tonight's smoky journey together. So, you think candles are just about ambience and Instagram photos? Adorable. Truly, like thinking a flamethrower is just a fancy lighter. Picture this, it's 3000 BC, and Grok has just discovered fire. Not the romantic, Instagram-worthy kind of fire you're thinking of, but the raw, primal, holy mammoth droppings. That rock is glowing, kind of fire. Grok doesn't know it yet, but he's about to accidentally invent the world's first mood lighting. And like most great inventions, it started with someone being absolutely terrified of the dark. The darkness was not your friend back then. It wasn't the cozy Netflix and chill darkness of modern times. No, this was the kind of darkness that came with very real possibilities of being eaten by something with more teeth than you. So when early humans figured out how to capture fire and make it portable, it was less about ambience and more about not becoming a midnight snack for a saber-toothed something or other. Enter the torch, humanity's first attempt at portable lighting, and arguably the most dangerous flashlight ever invented. Take a stick, wrap it in animal fat or resin, soaked rags, light it on fire, and wave it around. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, as it turns out. Torches drip burning fat, set things ablaze accidentally, and had the annoying habit of going out at the worst possible moments. Like when you were being chased by that saber-toothed something, or other we mentioned earlier. But humans are stubborn creatures, and they refused to accept that nighttime meant bedtime. They wanted to extend their day, to push back against the tyranny of sunset. They wanted to see what they were eating, who they were talking to, and most importantly, what was lurking just beyond the firelight. So they experimented. They tried different materials, different shapes, different ways of containing the flame. And somewhere around 3000 BC, some brilliant ancestor looked at a burning stick and thought, you know what? This needs to be smaller, more controlled, and significantly less likely to burn down my cave. The early Egyptians were among the first to get serious about this whole controlled lighting business. They took rushes from the Nile, dipped them in animal fat, and created what we might generously call the world's first candles. Generous because calling them candles is like calling a stone wheel a Ferrari. They worked technically, but they smoked like a bonfire, smelled like a slaughterhouse, and had about as much romantic appeal as a dead fish. But they burned, and that was revolutionary. These weren't the elegant, perfectly formed candles you see in fancy restaurants today. These were crude, lumpy, irregular things that looked like they'd been made by someone having a particularly bad day. The wick was literally just a rush reed, and the wax was whatever animal fat happened to be lying around. Cow fat, sheep fat, occasionally human fat if times were really tough, and you weren't asking too many questions about where your neighbors had gone. The smell was magnificent, and by magnificent, we mean absolutely horrific. Imagine burning bacon, but the bacon has been sitting in the sun for a week, and also someone mixed it with wet dog. That was your evening ambience. Romance was not yet invented, mostly because everyone was too busy trying not to gag from the smoke. But here's the thing about humans, we adapt, we get used to things. Within a generation, people weren't even noticing the smell anymore. It was just part of life, like taxes or that weird rash that everyone pretended they didn't have. The Egyptians had successfully extended their day, and for the first time in human history, nighttime became something other than time to hide and hope nothing eats us. The wealthy Egyptians, not content with simple rush candles, began experimenting with beeswax. Now, beeswax was expensive, ridiculously expensive. The kind of expensive that made common people laugh bitterly and continue burning their animal fat rush lights. But for those who could afford it, beeswax was a revelation. It burned cleaner, smelled better, and lasted longer. It was the luxury car of ancient lighting technology. These early beeswax candles were status symbols. Having them meant you were either very wealthy, very well connected, or very good at stealing from beehives. They became associated with religious ceremonies and important occasions. The priests loved them because they didn't fill the temple with the smell of rotting meat, and the gods presumably appreciated not having their worship services smell like a particularly unsuccessful barbecue. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, similar discoveries were happening independently. The Chinese were experimenting with whale fat and rice paper. The Indians were using clarified butter and cotton wicks. The Romans, never ones to be outdone, were developing their own versions using tallow and various plant fibers. Everyone was basically trying to solve the same problem: how to make fire portable, controllable, and ideally not lethal to everyone in the immediate vicinity. The Romans, being Romans, decided to get organized about it. They couldn't just have people making random candles willy-nilly. That would be chaos, and Romans hated chaos almost as much as they hated barbarians and people who didn't appreciate a good crucifixion. So they standardized candle making. They established workshops, trained craftsmen, and created what was probably the world's first candle manufacturing industry. Roman candles were serious business. They had specific dimensions, specific burn times, and specific purposes. There were candles for homes, candles for temples, candles for outdoor use, and candles for various civic functions. The Romans loved categorizing things, and candles were no exception. They probably had a different candle for every day of the week, and twice as many for religious holidays. But the real game changer came when someone figured out how to make proper wicks. The early rush lights were basically just reeds that happened to burn, but dedicated wicks changed everything. Twisted fibers, properly prepared and treated, could control the burn rate, reduce smoking, and make the whole candle experience significantly less miserable for everyone involved. The wick was revolutionary technology disguised as a piece of string. Get the wick wrong, and your candle would either burn too fast, too slow, too smoky, or not at all. Get it right, and suddenly you had controllable, reliable light that didn't require constant attention. This was the difference between a torch that demanded to be fed and watched every moment, and a candle that could be lit and largely ignored while it did its job. Of course, figuring out the perfect wick took centuries of trial and error. Mostly error. There were wicks that burned too fast and consumed the entire candle in minutes. There were wicks that refused to stay lit and required constant relighting. There were wicks that produced flames so large they were basically just small torches with delusions of grandeur. And there were wicks that created so much smoke that using them indoors was tantamount to chemical warfare against your own family. But gradually, through countless experiments and probably quite a few accidental house fires, candle makers began to understand the science behind the wick. Different materials burned differently. Different thicknesses produced different flame sizes. Different treatments affected burning rates. It was complicated, technical knowledge that was passed down from master to apprentice, carefully guarded and constantly refined. The medieval period brought new challenges and innovations to the candle world. The Catholic Church had become a major consumer of candles, using them in religious services, ceremonies, and to light their vast cathedrals and monasteries. This created a massive market for candles, but also very specific requirements. Church candles needed to burn for specific lengths of time during services. They needed to be made from appropriate materials, and they absolutely could not go out at inconvenient moments, like during the middle of Mass. The Church took its candles seriously, very seriously. There were rules about what materials could be used, how they should be made, and when they should be lit. Beeswax became the preferred material for church candles, not just because it burned better, but because it was seen as pure and natural. Tallow candles, made from animal fat, were considered too crude and worldly for sacred purposes. This created a two-tier candle market. The wealthy and the church used expensive beeswax candles that burned clean and bright. Everyone else made do with tallow candles that smoked, smelled, and occasionally dripped burning fat on unsuspecting users. It was yet another way that medieval society divided itself between the haves and the have-nots. Even their lighting technology reflected social hierarchy. Candle making became a legitimate profession during this period. Chandlers, as they were called, were skilled craftsmen who understood the complex art of creating reliable light sources. They knew which animal fats worked best, how to prepare wicks properly, and how to shape candles for different purposes. It was technical knowledge that took years to master and was essential for daily life. The chandler's workshop was a fascinating place, if you could tolerate the smell. Great cauldrons of melted tallow bubbled away, filling the air with the aroma of rendered animal fat. Rows of wicks hung from wooden frames, waiting to be dipped repeatedly in the hot tallow until they built up enough wax to form proper candles. It was labor-intensive, time-consuming work that required both skill and stamina. Dipping candles was an art form. Too fast, and the wax wouldn't stick properly. Too slow, and the previous layers would melt off. The temperature had to be just right, the consistency perfect, and the rhythm steady. A skilled chandler could dip dozens of candles simultaneously, creating uniform products that would burn evenly and reliably. It was manufacturing technology centuries before the Industrial Revolution. But candles weren't just about practical lighting. They were becoming symbolic, ceremonial, and downright mystical. Different cultures attached different meanings to candles and candlelight. They represented life, hope, the soul, divine presence, and the triumph of light over darkness. Religious ceremonies incorporated candles not just for illumination, but for their symbolic significance. The Catholic Church developed elaborate candle rituals. There were special candles for Easter, for Christmas, for saints' days, and for various other religious observances. The Paschal candle, lit during Easter services, was enormous and highly decorated, meant to burn throughout the Easter season. Votive candles were lit by worshippers as prayers, each small flame representing a personal petition to the divine. Other religions adopted similar practices. Jewish communities used candles for Sabbath observances and religious holidays. Islamic cultures incorporated candles into various ceremonies and festivals. Even pagan traditions that pre-dated Christianity often involved candles or similar light sources in their rituals and celebrations. There was something universally appealing about controlled fire, about light in the darkness that spoke to fundamental human needs and fears. The symbolism of candlelight extended beyond religion into secular culture. Candles became associated with learning and scholarship. The phrase, "burning the midnight oil," comes from scholars who worked late into the night by candlelight, literally burning through their lighting resources in pursuit of knowledge. Libraries and scriptoriums were filled with the soft glow of candles, creating an atmosphere that modern students might find inviolable compared to harsh fluorescent lighting. But working by candlelight had its challenges. The light was dim, flickering, and inconsistent. Reading required holding books close to the flame, risking singeing pages or eyebrows. Writing demanded careful positioning to avoid shadows falling across the work. And the constant smoke was hard on both eyes and lungs. Scholars of the medieval period earned their reputation for dedication partly because studying under these conditions required serious commitment. The wealthy began to use candles for entertainment and social purposes. Dinner parties lit by candlelight became fashionable among the upper classes. The soft, warm light was flattering to faces and created an intimate atmosphere perfect for conversation and dining. Of course, this required enormous numbers of candles, making such gatherings expensive displays of wealth and status. These early dinner parties were logistical challenges. Servants had to light dozens or even hundreds of candles before guests arrived. They had to monitor them throughout the evening, replacing burned-out candles and cleaning up the inevitable wax drips. The fire hazard was enormous, requiring constant vigilance to prevent accidental blazes that could destroy entire buildings. But the effect was magical. Rooms filled with the soft, golden glow of candlelight created an atmosphere unlike anything achievable with other lighting technologies of the time. Faces looked softer, food appeared more appetizing, and conversations seemed more intimate and meaningful. The wealthy were literally buying ambience, and it was worth every expensive candle. Fashion began to adapt to candlelight. Clothing colors that looked good under natural sunlight might appear completely different under the warm, limited spectrum of candle flames. Women's cosmetics were formulated to work with candlelight, creating appearances that would be stunning in the evening, but potentially alarming in broad daylight. Social customs developed around the realities of limited, flickering illumination. The production of candles began to industrialize during the later medieval period. Larger workshops employed multiple craftsmen and could produce candles in greater quantities. Trade guilds developed to regulate quality and protect the interests of chandlers. Standards emerged for different types of candles, ensuring that customers knew what they were buying and could rely on consistent performance. Competition between different regions and cities led to innovations in candle-making techniques. Some areas became known for particularly high-quality beeswax candles. Others developed specialized tallow candles that burned more cleanly or lasted longer. Trade routes carried candles across Europe and beyond, spreading techniques and materials to new markets. The discovery of spermaceti, a waxy substance found in sperm whale heads, revolutionized high-end candle making. Spermaceti candles burned even more brightly and cleanly than beeswax, with virtually no smoke or odor. They were incredibly expensive, making them status symbols for the extremely wealthy, but they represented the pinnacle of pre-industrial lighting technology. Whaling became partly driven by the demand for spermaceti, leading to the dangerous and difficult pursuit of sperm whales across the world's oceans. The whaling industry that would later inspire Moby Dick was fueled, literally and figuratively, by the desire for better candles. Men risked their lives in small boats, hunting massive marine mammals, all so that wealthy people could have slightly better dinner party lighting. The cultural impact of candlelight continued to grow throughout the Renaissance. Artists began to explore the dramatic possibilities of candlelit scenes. Painters like Georges de la Tour became famous for their mastery of candlelight effects, creating works that seemed to glow from within. The warm light of candles became associated with intimacy, mystery, and spiritual contemplation in artistic representations. Literature embraced candlelight as a setting and symbol. Ghost stories were told by candlelight, taking advantage of the flickering shadows and limited illumination to create atmosphere. Romantic poetry often featured candles as metaphors for love, life, and beauty. The phrase, brief candle, from Shakespeare's Macbeth used the image of a quickly burned candle to represent the fleeting nature of human life. But candlelight wasn't just romantic and atmospheric. It was also dangerous. House fires caused by unattended candles were a constant threat. Entire neighborhoods could be destroyed when a single candle was knocked over or left too close to combustible materials. Fire safety was a major concern in cities where buildings were built close together and constructed largely of wood. Safety innovations began to appear. Candle holders became more sophisticated, with features designed to catch dripping wax and prevent candles from falling over. Candlesticks with wide bases provided stability. Enclosed lanterns protected flames from wind and prevented accidental contact with flammable materials. Glass chimneys were developed to shield flames while still allowing light to escape. The social customs around candles became increasingly elaborate. Proper candle etiquette became part of good manners for the upper classes. There were rules about when to light candles, how many to use, and how to arrange them for different occasions. Servants were trained in the art of candle management, learning to light, maintain, and extinguish candles without disrupting social gatherings. Candle clocks became a sophisticated timekeeping technology. By creating candles of uniform thickness and composition, it was possible to mark time intervals as the candle burned down. Different cultures developed their own versions of this technology, using it for everything from timing religious services to measuring work periods. The phrase, burning the candle at both ends, comes from the practice of lighting both ends of a candle to make it burn twice as fast, metaphorically representing unsustainable activity. The colonial period brought new challenges and opportunities for candle making in the New World. European settlers found themselves without established chandleries and had to develop their own candle making capabilities. They experimented with local materials, including bayberries, which produced a hard, aromatic wax that burned cleanly and smelled pleasant. Bayberry candles became a distinctly American innovation. The berries were harvested in late fall, boiled to release their waxy coating, and processed into candles that were superior to most tallow candles and much less expensive than imported beeswax. The tradition of burning bayberry candles during the holiday season originated from both their pleasant scent and their association with prosperity and good fortune. Colonial households often made their own candles as a regular domestic activity. It was skilled work that required understanding of materials, timing, and technique. Women typically managed candle production, along with other household manufacturing tasks like soap making and textile production. The quality of a household's candles was a reflection of the housewife's skills and the family's prosperity. The process was labor-intensive and time-consuming. Animal fat had to be rendered, clarified, and heated to the proper temperature. Wicks had to be prepared and hung at precisely the right intervals. The dipping process required patience and consistency to build up even layers of wax. A single day's candle making might produce enough candles to last a family several weeks, making it a significant periodic activity. Trading posts and general stores in frontier communities often stocked candles as essential supplies. Along with salt, gunpowder, and basic tools, candles were considered necessities for survival in isolated settlements. The cost of candles was a significant expense for most families, leading to careful conservation and creative strategies for extending their utility. Reading and other evening activities were planned around available candles. Families might gather around a single candle to maximize its illumination while minimizing cost. Children learned to read by candlelight, straining their eyes in the dim, flickering glow. Evening social activities centered around efficient use of limited lighting resources. The Industrial Revolution began to transform candle production in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Mechanical equipment made it possible to produce candles more quickly and uniformly. Steam-powered machinery could prepare wicks, heat wax, and even automate parts of the dipping process. What had been artisanal craft work began to become industrial manufacturing. New materials also became available. Stearin, derived from animal fats but purified and processed, created harder, cleaner burning candles than traditional tallow. Paraffin wax, a petroleum byproduct, eventually became the standard material for most candles. It was cheap, reliable, and could be produced in large quantities with consistent quality. The development of the braided wick was another major innovation. Earlier wicks had been simple twisted fibers, but braided wicks curled as they burned, bringing the tip into the flame's hottest area and reducing smoking and mushrooming. This seemingly small improvement made candles much more user-friendly and reduced the need for constant wick trimming. Gas lighting began to compete with candles in urban areas during the 19th century. Gas lamps provided brighter, more consistent illumination without the fire hazards associated with open flames. Wealthy urban households began to install gas lighting systems, reducing their dependence on candles for primary illumination. But rather than disappearing, candles found new roles. They became associated with special occasions, romantic settings, and decorative purposes. The practical necessity that had driven candle development for thousands of years began to give way to aesthetic and symbolic uses. Candles became luxury items rather than basic necessities. The development of kerosene lamps provided another alternative to candles, particularly in rural areas where gas lighting was unavailable. Kerosene burned brighter than candles and was often more economical for extended use. Oil lamps with glass chimneys provided steady, reliable light that didn't flicker in drafts or require constant replacement. Candle manufacturers responded to increasing competition by focusing on quality, specialty products, and new markets. Decorative candles became more elaborate, with colored waxes, artistic shapes, and pleasant fragrances. Birthday candles became a traditional part of cake decorating. Holiday candles for Christmas trees and other seasonal celebrations created seasonal markets. The invention of electricity and electric lighting in the late 19th century seemed to spell doom for the candle industry. Electric lights were brighter, safer, more convenient, and increasingly affordable. Urban areas began to install electric street lighting, and wealthy homes started to wire for electric illumination. The age of artificial light had begun, and candles seemed destined for obsolescence. But something unexpected happened. Rather than disappearing, candles evolved. They became atmospheric rather than practical. Restaurants discovered that candlelight created intimate ambience that electric lighting couldn't match. Romantic dinners were enhanced by candles. Special occasions were marked with candle lighting ceremonies. The symbolic and aesthetic values of candles proved more durable than their practical utility. The 20th century saw the emergence of the modern candle industry. Mass production techniques made candles affordable luxury items. New synthetic materials expanded the possibilities for colors, scents, and shapes. Candles became home decoration items, gifts, and accessories for creating mood and ambience. Scented candles became particularly popular, offering not just light but aromatic experiences. Essential oils, synthetic fragrances, and natural materials were incorporated into wax formulations to create candles that could transform the atmosphere of a room. The psychology of scent marketing discovered that certain fragrances could influence mood, relaxation, and even purchasing behavior. The development of container candles revolutionized the industry. Rather than traditional taper candles that required candlesticks, container candles came in glasses, tins, and ceramic vessels that contained the melting wax and eliminated dripping. These were safer, more convenient, and allowed for longer burn times and more complex fragrance releases. Votive candles became popular for both religious and secular purposes. Small, inexpensive candles in protective glass holders could be used safely in groups to create dramatic lighting effects. Churches, restaurants, and homes used votive candles to create atmosphere without the expense and maintenance requirements of larger candles. The aromatherapy movement embraced candles as vehicles for delivering therapeutic scents. Claims about the psychological and physical benefits of various fragrances led to specialized candles designed for relaxation, energy enhancement, stress relief, and other wellness purposes. While the scientific evidence for many aromatherapy claims remained questionable, consumers embraced the idea of functional fragrances. Candle making became a popular hobby and craft activity. Craft stores began selling supplies for home candle making, including molds, wicks, fragrances, and various types of wax. People enjoyed creating personalized candles as gifts, home decorations, and creative outlets. The satisfaction of making something useful and beautiful appealed to crafters and do-it-yourself enthusiasts. Different candle making techniques developed for home crafters. Traditional dipping remained popular for making taper candles. Molding techniques allowed for shaped candles in various forms. Container candles were relatively easy for beginners to make successfully. Advanced techniques included layered colors, embedded objects, and complex fragrance blending. The environmental movement began to influence candle manufacturing and purchasing decisions. Concerns about petroleum-based paraffin wax led to renewed interest in natural materials like soy wax and beeswax. Soy candles made from soybean oil became popular as eco-friendly alternatives that burned cleaner and were derived from renewable resources. Lead wicks were phased out due to health concerns about lead emissions when candles burned. Cotton and paper wicks became standard, eliminating the toxic metal exposure that had been an unrecognized hazard of earlier candles. Consumer awareness of indoor air quality made clean, burning candles more desirable. The luxury candle market exploded in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. High-end candle brands began creating premium products with exotic fragrances, elegant packaging, and premium materials. Designer candles became status symbols, with some single candles costing more than entire households had once spent on lighting for a year. Celebrity endorsements and lifestyle marketing transformed candles from utilitarian objects into lifestyle accessories. Home decorating shows featured candles as essential elements of room design. Magazines promoted candles as tools for creating specific moods and atmospheres. The candle industry learned to sell not just light and fragrance, but experiences and aspirations. Specialty candle stores began appearing in shopping malls and upscale retail areas. These boutiques offered extensive selections of candles for every occasion, mood, and preference. Knowledgeable staff could recommend candles for specific purposes, from romantic dinners to stress relief to seasonal decorating. The retail experience became part of the product's appeal. Seasonal candle marketing became sophisticated and profitable. Halloween candles with spooky fragrances and colors. Christmas candles with traditional holiday scents like pine, cinnamon, and vanilla. Spring candles with floral fragrances. Summer candles with fresh, outdoor scents. Each season brought new product launches and marketing campaigns targeting specific emotional associations. The spa and wellness industry embraced candles as essential elements of relaxation environments. Massage therapists, meditation centers, yoga studios, and luxury spas used carefully selected candles to create calming atmospheres. The association between candlelight and relaxation became so strong that many people automatically felt more peaceful in candlelit environments. Home entertaining experienced a candle renaissance as people sought to create restaurant-quality ambience in their own homes. Dinner parties featured elaborate candle arrangements. Wine tastings used candlelight to create sophisticated atmospheres. Holiday celebrations centered around traditional candle lighting ceremonies and decorative arrangements. Safety technology for candles continued to improve. Self-extinguishing wicks were developed to prevent candles from burning down completely and potentially causing fires. Heat-resistant containers and bases reduced fire hazards. Better wick technology minimized smoking and mushrooming that could create safety problems. The internet revolutionized candle retail and marketing. Online stores offered enormous selections that physical stores couldn't match. Customer reviews helped buyers choose appropriate products. Subscription services delivered seasonal candles automatically. Social media showcasing created viral trends for specific candle styles or brands. Artisanal candle making experienced a revival as consumers sought unique, handcrafted products. Small batch candle makers created distinctive products with unusual fragrances, natural materials, and artistic presentations. Farmers markets, craft fairs, and specialty stores featured locally made candles as alternatives to mass-produced products. The psychology of candlelight became a subject of scientific study. Researchers investigated how candlelight affected mood, perception, and behavior. Studies suggested that people appeared more attractive in candlelight, that the warm color temperature promoted relaxation, and that the flickering movement had hypnotic qualities that reduced stress and anxiety. Restaurants and hospitality businesses used these findings to optimize their lighting designs. The right combination of candlelight and other illumination could influence how customers felt about food, service, and overall experience. Lighting became a tool for managing customer psychology and enhancing business outcomes. The meditation and mindfulness movements found candles particularly compatible with contemplative practices. Candle meditation, focusing attention on flame movement and breath coordination, became a popular technique for stress reduction and spiritual development. The simple act of lighting a candle became a ritual for transitioning into meditative states. Religious and spiritual communities continued to find meaningful roles for candles in contemporary practice. Memorial candles honored deceased loved ones. Prayer candles accompanied personal petitions and intentions. Seasonal religious observances incorporated traditional candle lighting ceremonies that connected modern practitioners with centuries of tradition. The science of candle burning became surprisingly complex as researchers investigated combustion dynamics, fragrance release mechanisms, and optimal wick designs. Computer modeling helped optimize candle performance, predicting burn rates, fragrance throw, and potential safety issues. What had once been pure craftsmanship became informed by sophisticated scientific understanding. Environmental concerns led to innovations in sustainable candle production. Renewable wax sources like soy, coconut, and even recycled materials became popular alternatives to petroleum-based paraffin. Biodegradable packaging replaced plastic containers. Carbon-neutral shipping and manufacturing processes appealed to environmentally conscious consumers. The global candle market became enormous, with billions of dollars in annual sales across numerous countries. International trade brought exotic fragrances, materials, and designs to markets worldwide. Cultural exchanges influenced candle preferences, with Asian meditation practices, European luxury traditions, and American innovation all contributing to global candle culture. Smart home technology began incorporating candles through electronic ignition systems, timers, and even smart candles with LED flames that could be controlled via smartphone apps. While purists preferred traditional flame candles, technology offered convenience and safety features that appealed to modern consumers. The COVID-19 pandemic unexpectedly boosted candle sales as people spent more time at home and sought comfort items. Candles provided emotional comfort, helped create pleasant home environments, and offered affordable luxury during uncertain times. The association between candlelight and comfort proved remarkably durable across different historical circumstances. Therapeutic candle use expanded beyond simple aromatherapy to include color therapy, sound therapy, candles that crackled, and even candles designed to support specific wellness goals like better sleep, increased energy, or emotional balance. While scientific evidence for many therapeutic claims remained limited, consumer belief in candles' wellness benefits continued to drive market growth. The craft cocktail movement discovered candles as ingredients, using candle wax to rim glasses, candle flames to caramelize sugars, and even edible wax elements in specialized drinks. Molecular gastronomy incorporated candle aesthetics into food presentation. The boundary between candles and other sensory experiences continued to blur. Educational candle-making programs appeared in schools, community centers, and senior facilities. Learning to make candles provided hands-on chemistry education, historical connections, and practical skills. Therapeutic programs for various populations used candle making as occupational therapy, stress relief, and creative expression. The luxury travel industry incorporated signature candle experiences into hotel and resort offerings. Custom-scented candles became unique amenities that guests associated with specific destinations. High-end accommodations used candle scents as part of their brand identity, creating olfactory memories that encourage repeat visits. Wedding and event planning embraced candles as essential romantic and decorative elements. Elaborate candle displays became centerpieces for ceremonies and receptions. Unity candle ceremonies symbolized the joining of families. Memorial candles honored absent loved ones. The symbolism of candlelight proved endlessly adaptable to human celebrations and commemorations. Today, after more than 5,000 years of human innovation, candles remain relevant and beloved despite being technically obsolete. We have electric lights that are brighter, safer, more reliable, and more efficient than any candle. Yet people continue to buy, burn, and cherish candles for reasons that are little to do with practical illumination. Modern candles serve our psychological and emotional needs, rather than our lighting needs. They help us relax, create intimate atmospheres, mark special occasions, and connect with traditions that span millennia. The warm, flickering light of a candle still speaks to something fundamental in human nature, some deep-seated appreciation for controlled fire that transcends practical utility. The candle industry continues to innovate, creating products that would amaze ancient chandlers. Candles that change colors, candles that play music, candles that respond to voice commands, candles that clean the air, candles that repel insects, candles that supposedly balance chakras or align energies. The basic technology of burning wax remains the same, but the applications and claims have expanded far beyond simple illumination. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about the history of candlelight nights is how consistent human responses to candlelight have remained across cultures and centuries. Ancient Romans dining by candlelight, medieval monks copying manuscripts by flickering flames, colonial families gathering around precious candles, and modern couples sharing intimate dinners all experienced fundamentally similar psychological and emotional responses to the warm, gentle light of burning wax. In our age of artificial intelligence, space travel, and digital everything, the simple pleasure of lighting a candle and watching its flame dance remains as compelling as ever. We may not need candles to see in the dark anymore, but we still need them to feel at peace, to create beauty, to mark moments as special, and to connect with the countless generations of humans who found comfort and wonder in the simple miracle of controlled fire. The sleepy history of candlelight nights continues to be written every evening, in homes around the world, as people light candles for reasons they might not fully understand but somehow know are important. The technology has barely changed in centuries, but the human need for the particular kind of light and atmosphere that only a candle can provide seems as permanent as any aspect of human nature. The economics of candle production throughout history reveal fascinating patterns of supply, demand, and technological adaptation. In medieval times, the price of a single beeswax candle could equal a day's wages for a common labourer. This wasn't just expensive lighting. It was prohibitively expensive lighting that reinforced social hierarchies and economic disparities. The wealthy didn't just have better candles, they had access to light itself in ways that poorer people simply couldn't afford. Regional variations in candle production created interesting trade dynamics. Mediterranean regions with abundant olive oil developed oil lamp technologies that competed with candles. Northern European countries with large cattle populations became centers for tallow candle production. Areas near beehives developed beeswax industries. Coastal regions engaged in whaling had access to spermaceti. Geography literally determined how people lit their nights. The guild system that developed around candle making was particularly strict and protective. Chandlers' guilds controlled who could make candles, what materials they could use, and how much they could charge. Apprenticeships lasted for years, with young men learning not just the technical skills, but also the business practices and trade secrets that made successful candle production possible. These weren't just craft workers, they were essential service providers whose skills kept civilization functioning after dark. Quality control in pre-industrial candle making was entirely dependent on individual skill and reputation. A chandler whose candles consistently failed, smoked excessively, or burned irregularly would quickly lose customers to competitors. Word-of-mouth reputation was everything, and bad candles could ruin a business. This created intense pressure for consistent quality and continuous improvement in techniques and materials. The transportation and storage of candles presented unique challenges. Wax melted in heat, became brittle in cold, and could be damaged by rough handling. Long-distance trade in candles required careful packaging, climate considerations, and often significant markups to cover losses during transport. Candles were fragile luxury goods that demanded sophisticated logistics long before modern supply chain management existed. Military applications of candles were surprisingly diverse and important. Armies needed portable lighting for night operations, map reading, and camp activities. Naval vessels required reliable lighting systems that could function in rough seas and confined spaces. Signal candles were used for communication across distances. The logistics of keeping armed forces supplied with adequate lighting was a significant military challenge that influenced strategy and planning. The development of candle snuffers, wick trimmers, and other accessories created entire subsidiary industries. Metalworkers specialized in creating elegant candlesticks, practical snuffers, and decorative holders. These weren't just functional tools, they became status symbols and artistic expressions in their own right. The wealthy competed to have the most elaborate candle accessories, turning lighting into interior decoration. Seasonal patterns in candle production and consumption created rhythm in pre-industrial economies. Winter months saw peak demand as darkness dominated daily life. Spring brought renewed supplies of materials as animals were slaughtered and tallow became available. Summer was ideal for candle making as warm weather facilitated melting and forming processes. Autumn harvest festivals often featured special candles as celebration accessories. The social rituals surrounding candles became increasingly elaborate over time. Coming-of-age ceremonies incorporated candle lighting. Wedding ceremonies used unity candles to symbolize joining lives. Funeral rites included memorial candles to honor the deceased. Birthday celebrations featured candles representing years of life. These traditions created emotional associations with candlelight that transcended practical utility. Different social classes developed distinct candle customs and preferences. Aristocrats used expensive spermaceti candles in elaborate silver holders for formal dinners. Middle-class merchants displayed their prosperity with quality beeswax candles in their homes. Working families carefully conserved tallow candles, using them sparingly and efficiently. Even candle etiquette reflected social status and economic circumstances. The influence of candles on architecture was more significant than commonly recognized. Window placement, room proportions, and interior layouts were all influenced by the realities of candlelight illumination. Architects designed spaces to maximize the effectiveness of limited light sources. Reading nooks were positioned near windows for daytime use and near optimal candle placement for evening activities. The built environment adapted to accommodate lighting technology limitations. Candle-related accidents and their prevention became major public safety concerns in crowded urban areas. Fire codes began to address candle use in public buildings. Insurance companies developed policies that considered candle-related fire risks. Building materials and construction techniques evolved to minimize fire hazards associated with open flame lighting. Urban planning had to account for the reality that every building contained multiple fire sources. The psychology of candlelight continued to fascinate researchers and practitioners across multiple disciplines. Anthropologists studied how different cultures interpreted candlelight symbolism. Psychologists investigated the neurological responses to flickering flames. Interior designers learned to manipulate mood and perception through strategic candle placement. The simple flame that once just provided light became a tool for understanding human consciousness and behavior. International candle traditions developed unique characteristics while sharing common elements. Japanese Buddhist temple candles emphasized purity and meditation. Mexican Day of the Dead celebrations featured elaborate candle displays. Scandinavian winter festivals used candles to combat seasonal depression. Indian Diwali festivals incorporated thousands of small oil lamps and candles. Each culture found ways to make candlelight meaningful within their specific context. The environmental impact of historical candle production was substantial, but rarely considered at the time. Whaling for sperma sati contributed to marine ecosystem disruption. Deforestation provided wood for wick materials and fuel for candle-making processes. Animal agriculture for tallow production had significant land use implications. The seemingly simple candle actually represented complex resource extraction and processing systems. Modern candle safety research has revealed surprising complexities in what seems like simple combustion. Wick material affects burn patterns. Fragrance oils can alter flame characteristics, container materials influence heat distribution, and air circulation patterns affect burning efficiency. Contemporary candle manufacturing incorporates scientific understanding that would astound historical chandlers with its precision and predictability. The therapeutic candle industry has created subcategories that would seem fantastical to historical users. Candles designed for specific chakras, candles infused with crystals, candles that supposedly attract prosperity, candles for enhancing creativity, candles for improving sleep quality. Whether these products deliver their promised benefits, they demonstrate humanity's persistent desire to find meaning and purpose in candlelight beyond simple illumination. Candle collecting became a recognized hobby with specialized knowledge, rare finds, and passionate communities. Vintage candle holders, unusual shapes, discontinued fragrances, and limited edition designs created collector markets. Antique shows featured candle-related items as desirable finds. Museums developed collections of historical lighting devices. The objects that once simply provided light became artifacts worthy of preservation and study. The integration of candles into modern wellness practices reflects ancient intuitions about the psychological benefits of controlled fire. Meditation teachers recommend candle gazing as focusing techniques. Therapists use candles to create calming environments for counseling sessions. Spa treatments incorporate candlelight as essential atmospheric elements. Yoga studios use candles to enhance mindfulness practices. The flame that once fought literal darkness now helps combat psychological and emotional darkness. Celebrity candle brands and lifestyle marketing transformed candles from commodities into personal statements. When famous people endorse specific candle brands or create signature scents, they're leveraging the intimate associations people have with particular fragrances and lighting experiences. The candle in your living room becomes connected to aspirational identities and lifestyle choices. So the next time you light a candle, remember that you're participating in one of humanity's oldest and most persistent technologies. You're connecting with ancient Egyptians, medieval chandlers, colonial housewives, and countless others who understood that sometimes the best light isn't the brightest light, but the most human light. The light that flickers like life itself, burns like hope, and reminds us that even in our electric age, we still find magic in fire.